Awesome. Welcome, everyone. Looks like we still have people logging on. I'm going to give it just a few more seconds here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So welcome to the virtual college fair for all of Alaska students. Thank you so much for joining us. Just a few housekeeping announcements before we get started. You can use your Q&A button on your screen to type any questions that you may have for the presenters, and you can do this at any time. Your camera and your microphone are off, so the panelists will not be able to see or hear you. So again, if you have questions, just type them in the Q&A box. This is just one of many sessions that is happening, and this is also being recorded. So you will be able to access this specific presentation as well as other presentations that happened earlier today. And that can be found at strivescan.com/Alaska. Again, that's strivescan.com/Alaska. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our presenters.
Hey everyone, it's great to see so many folks on the webinar today. My name is Lael Oldmixon. I am the director of the UA Scholars Program. I'm also the director of Alaska 529. We're housed within the University of Alaska. I've been with the University of Alaska since 2006. I started in residence life and spent several years in admissions, where I worked as a colleague with Kate here on the line, and then moved over to the UA Scholars Program in 2013. So I've had experience working with a lot of scholarships within Alaska and also within the university system. So I'm excited to help answer questions that you might have about that process, and also to share some of my knowledge with you.
And hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, joining our session. My name is Kate Hillenbrand, and I am the Director of Communications and Outreach for the Alaska Commission on Post-Secondary Ed, otherwise known as ACPE. So my role here tonight, we'll be talking a lot about the scholarships and grant programs that ACPE helps to administer, such as the Alaska Performance Scholarship and the Alaska Education Grant. But kind of broader picture there, and my role, as Lael mentioned, we were colleagues back when I worked for the University of Alaska Anchorage in admissions. I also continued in post-secondary, working for Alaska Pacific University as the director of admissions there, and now with ACPE. So, for the last about 15 years, have worked very closely with post-secondary institutions, students, families in navigating this very interesting world of scholarships and how to really put your best foot forward in poisoning yourself to have access to that wonderful free money when you are looking to pursue post-secondary education. So hopefully today we can share a little bit more of that information and answer any questions you might have. Lael, you're still on mute.
This is the story of my day.
Mine as well.
So I think I'm going to go ahead and just kind of give a little background on the UA Scholars Program, and then also give a brief overview of how to go about applying for scholarships generally at the University of Alaska. So the UA Scholars Program, there may be some UA scholars on the line, or maybe you're a future UA scholar and just don't know it yet. But the UA Scholars Program is a scholarship program that awards $12,000 to each student that's ranked in the top 10% of their high school class. Typically, what happens is at the end of the junior year, somebody from the high school will go in and tell us who ranked in the top 10% at the end of the junior year. So right about now, we're finding out all the names of the scholars. In fact, we just sent out a press release this week letting folks know that the October 1st deadline for high schools to let us know who their UA scholars are has passed, and we have over 900 UA scholars who have been awarded the Scholars Award this year. So it's a merit scholarship. It's a scholarship that students can really only get by being in the top 10%. It is given to students from all over Alaska. So we had over 300 communities that were represented in Alaska with the Scholars Program. So rural villages with one graduating student, and urban schools with, 40 or 50 scholars in the top 10%. So we really do feel that that program is as much of an ambassador program as it is an academic merit program. And the purpose behind it was to address a real problem in Alaska at the time, which I think is also now today a little bit of a problem as well, and that is brain drain out of Alaska. Our top talented students had been leaving Alaska. That I think that's also, and Kate, you can speak to this, one of the primary reasons why we have the Alaska Performance Scholarship, that we want to incentivize attendance at Alaska schools so that we can have Alaska's homegrown talent leading Alaska into the future and helping Alaska innovate and drive our economy. So the two scholarships work really well together for our students, and so many of our scholars benefit from both the Scholars Award and the APS, and many students who don't qualify for the Scholars Award do qualify for the APS, and generally qualify for up to as much as the full potential of the scholarship. So again, I'll let Kate speak to that piece. The parameters of the UA Scholars Award are that students have to apply for admission by May 1st. That's it. If they have been identified as a UA scholar, you apply for admission by May 1st, you're admitted, and you enroll in the following fall, and you have your $12,000, which is dispersed, so that means paid out over the course of 8 semesters. So you receive $1,500 a semester for the duration of time that you attend the University of Alaska. The scholarship can be used for any variety of academic approaches. So let's say you want to get a degree in nursing, and that might be a 2-year degree. You can use the award toward that. You can use it for any of our vocational and technical programs. You can also use it toward the full baccalaureate suite of programs that are offered at the University of Alaska. Additionally, what we've started to notice is that many of the students coming in are academically advanced because they've taken dual credit in high school, or they've taken advanced placement courses. And so they come in with so many credits, they graduate early. And we want to incentivize the total use of the scholarship. So we will, if you graduate early, we will continue to pay out if you attend graduate school at the University of Alaska, which is a little known fact, but that is another reason why you want to keep using that scholarship. So with the Scholars Award, that the award expires after you have been paid for 8 semesters, or after you have been absent from the university for more than 2 semesters. We allow a basically free time off. So if you want to go and study abroad, study away, explore outside of Alaska, go on a mission, serve in the military, you have 2 semesters where you can go and do that and not lose your award. We also have extended leave of absence options for students. So the scholarship itself is a pretty exciting one from a merit standpoint. It is, like I said, it's an ambassador scholarship, And we really do encourage students who receive it to consider all of the additional scholarships that they might be able to get as a result of being a UA Scholar. But the university has a number of scholarships that are not the UA Scholars Award that many students can apply for. In fact, that almost any student that applies to the university could apply for. And I just wanted to share this slide, which I'm happy to, or well, I guess it's not really a slide, a document that I'm happy to share out with folks who attend this webinar later. So I'm going to take a minute and share it with you. Oh, actually, you know what? I will share it with you right now, and we can talk about it a little bit later. But the university has thousands and thousands of scholarships available to you. And the biggest hurdle for people receiving the scholarship is that they don't apply, and that they overthink the process of applying for the scholarship. So I'm providing some tips here. I'm not going to go through them all right now, but I do want to point out a big piece here, and I accidentally put this in the wrong spot. October 1st is when the FAFSA.gov opens. And so every scholarship at the university requires the FAFSA. So you want to fill that out starting as soon as October 1st, which just recently passed. And all of our scholarships are listed in uaonline.alaska.edu. Okay, with that, I am going to pass the ball to Kate to talk about the ACPE programs.
Sure, Lil, thanks. I did notice we had a couple of questions that popped up, two of which I think directly relate to UA Scholars. So if we maybe want to touch upon those before going on, one is if you need to be from a public school, and then in terms of GPA, is it unweighted or weighted for UA Scholars? Those are really great questions to bring to the table.
Thanks. So the UA Scholars Award, it depends on your high school and how your high school uses their ranking, and they choose. So your high school has to tell us that they've used weighted or unweighted, and they're required to put in the student booklet what their criteria is. So if you have questions about how the award is ranked at your school, you should go and talk with your school guidance counselor just to make sure that they have articulated that information correctly in their booklet and to you. In terms of the, do you have to be from a public school? That's a great question. All of the schools that are accredited in the state of Alaska qualify for the UA Scholars Award, and many homeschools as well. So we have several many homeschools that participate, many private schools, many small Christian schools. So pretty much every school in Alaska that is listed on the Department of Education website qualifies for the Scholars Award. And if you were a UA Scholar, we have up until just very recently in the last couple of weeks have been sending out those award notifications. So if you haven't heard yet, you can ask your guidance counselor. They will definitely know, or you can contact our office, and I will provide my contact information at the end of the webinar.
Great, thanks, Lael, and thank you for the questions. As we go through, we'll certainly try to answer as many as we can. So as Lael mentioned, I'm going to talk about a few of the grant and scholarship opportunities that we administer through the Alaska Commission on Post-Secondary Education, or ACPE. I've put together some of the information on a couple of slides so you all can have a little bit of context for what I'm about to talk about. So let me just pull that up for you briefly here. Okay, so the first scholarship that I mentioned, that Lael also mentioned, is the Alaska Performance Scholarship. And so this is a merit-based scholarship that looks at basically 3 criteria for students: their high school curriculum, their GPA, and then test scores, ACT, SAT, or work keys. And the Alaska Performance Scholarship can award up to a little over $19,000, $19,050 across 8 semesters within 6 years of high school graduation. So depending on kind of your mix of GPA and test scores, and as long as you've, you know, taken all of the courses, successfully completed all of the courses outlined in the curriculum. So whichever kind of combination you get between GPA and test score will indicate what award level you will qualify for with the Alaska Performance Scholarship. And there are three award tiers. There's the tier 1 of the $4,755 a year, tier 2 of the $3,566, and then tier 3 of the $2,378 per year. And then there is some information there in terms of which GPA and test score corresponds with each of those tiers. It is also important to know with regard to qualifying, and there is a lot more information and FAQs on our website for APS. The website is at the bottom of the slide, but it's aps.alaska.gov. So you can get a lot of really good information there. But the information, or something that's really critical for all of you to know, is that the piece about the high school curriculum and successfully completing the rigorous curriculum, that really, the earlier that you can start that, the better. You want to stay, so, seniors, certainly there might be a class or two, that you might need to change in order to potentially get you on track to receive it. But if we have, sophomores, juniors, even freshmen in the room, it would really be great to take a look on the website. There's kind of a checklist of the 2 different curriculum options that you can follow to really try to fine-tune your schedule and see the coursework that you would need to take and successfully complete in high school to meet that curriculum requirement. So the earlier that you can prepare for that and plan for that, the better. So then the other piece, so if you meet this criteria that I mentioned on this slide for these 3 different tier level awards, and then it comes to getting notified and what do you actually need to do to receive this award. So as I mentioned before, in high school, you want to continually be working with your counselor, other school staff to make sure you're taking the right coursework. You also want to prepare for and take standardized testing, SAT, ACT, work keys during your senior year. And then also, and you'll hear this a lot, but it is absolutely essential that you submit the FAFSA, ideally by June 30th of your senior year. And then the other piece for the APS is that there must be an Alaska post-secondary institution selected as a school that will receive your FAFSA. So that way, basically, if we receive information, the report that you've qualified for the APS, we have an Alaska school to sync it with, to link it to. So it's absolutely critical that you submit the FAFSA and identify an Alaska post-secondary institution to receive it. So that's kind of, as a senior in high school, these next steps that you would take. Students are notified through something called the Alaska Student Aid Portal, or ASAP. You can go in and build an account and kind of track your eligibility, determine and get the notification that you are eligible when your award has been dispersed, things of that nature. So it's a really important account to have to kind of track what's going on. Also something that you can link to through our website. And then that's also where you'd be looking kind of as you go forward with APS in continuing your eligibility. So once you are in a post-secondary program, what you'd need to do to maintain and continue receiving the award. So there's a certain GPA that you'd want to be looking at. Maintaining satisfactory academic progress, so keeping those grades up and doing well on your way towards degree completion. And you do need to continually fill out the FAFSA each year. FAFSA is not a one-time deal. You need to do that pretty much every year that you will need to either qualify for scholarships or get some kind of federal aid. And then the other piece that is really important, just as a reminder here, the Alaska Performance Scholarship is utilized only in state. So these are awards that we're looking to keep our students in state, as Lael mentioned earlier in talking about the UA Scholar. This is really an opportunity for a way to incentivize and support our high performing students to stay in state and to really, make good financial choices in how they choose to pursue post-secondary education. And not just looking at, and trying to really kind of minimize that price tag for where you're looking to go to school. So we are, it is an in-state scholarship opportunity. As Lael also mentioned, and it looks like we do have a question about, can a student receive both UA Scholar and the Alaska Performance Scholarship? And the answer is yes, we do see that. They obviously have different awarding criteria. So, utilizing separate information, they're tracked and funded separately. But yes, we do have students who graduate within the top 10% of their graduating of their class, and also qualify for the APS because they have met, these qualifying or these award qualifiers. So the other thing that I did want to mention in particular is with regard to COVID. The graduating class of 2020, due to nationwide cancellations of the test administrations for SAT and ACT, the test score requirement was waived for APS. So eligibility was then determined for the graduating class of 2020 based on GPA, as well as the successful completion of a rigorous curriculum. There were also adjustments made to continuing eligibility, the credit requirement for those that had already, you're already in college and receiving the award, because some students were not able to complete certain coursework in the spring semester because certain courses had to end due to COVID and closures. So just as a side note there. And then lastly, the piece that I also want to share with all of you in terms of next steps. It's part of what, Lael and I are here to talk about today. And then also something that we offer through ACPE at our Success Center. And that is, utilizing the resources that you have in your community, or calling us at the Success Center. We have staff that are there Monday through Friday, either over the phone, over email, Zoom, setting up appointments to coach students through career exploration, scholarship application, completing the FAFSA, how to set up your Alaska student aid portal account. My staff is there every single day to help our students, help our Alaskan students do this. It's also where, if you're looking to get additional information or material sent out to you about any of these awards, we can do that as well. So you can go to either one of those websites so that we can connect, as you're as you're going through this particular season and potentially having some questions that need answering. So just scrolling through a couple of the questions. Yes, APS would be, in addition potentially to the AK Scholar. It's important to know that you do, just because a student potentially qualifies for the Alaska Performance Scholarship, they don't necessarily qualify for the UA Scholar. And if they qualify for UA Scholar, they don't necessarily qualify for APS. That it's not an automatic thing. So if a student meets those UA Scholar requirements, and if that same student also meets the APS requirements, yes, they could receive both scholarships. That is possible there.
Hey, Kate, how about
Sure.
I try to address the question of, are there scholarships that can be received by U.S. residents that are applicable
Oh
to?
gosh, yep, that first one. Sorry, I missed that completely.
No, that's okay. A lot of the scholarships that can be used at foreign institutions, the schools themselves that are eligible are listed on the FAFSA. And so if you do the FAFSA search, I believe it's right through the FAFSA application that you can do a school code search, or you can look up the schools. If your school that you want to attend is on that list, I do believe that those schools are FAFSA eligible and also therefore eligible to receive scholarships. And those schools may have their own individual scholarships.
Great. Thanks, Leo.
Yeah, no problem. I did want to say for the UA Scholars Program, we have been working to be as flexible as possible during the pandemic and as it pertains to COVID-19. The class of 2020, we extended the admissions deadline for them. We've been fairly flexible about, for students who started late because they thought that they were going to go outside and then decided to stay, or those students who may be returning in the spring. We're trying to be, now is the time that we're going to be as flexible as we can, because we know that this is unprecedented times. But in terms of what the class of 2021 will do, we're basically taking it day by day. And so it would be unfair for me to give a blanket exception to that. But I will say that as long as we are in a pandemic, we're going to work to be as flexible as possible.
Mm-hmm. And on that note, in terms of class of 2021 for the Alaska Performance Scholarship, which again is administered separately from UA Scholars, we are very closely watching the test administration cancellations, test center closures that are happening throughout the state. That gets into a lot of access issues and students having access to standardized testing. So we are watching that very closely. But a determination has not yet been made in terms of a waiver or kind of next steps there. Right now, we're still trying to kind of gauge what the next move will be, what additional cancellations might look like for the state. So we do not have an answer or a waiver at this time for the class of 2021. The other piece to know for folks, just a little bit of background information, because the Alaska Performance Scholarship is part of, it's written into Alaska statute, there are a number of steps that need to go into getting an approval and getting that waiver to happen. So, it's a bit of a process. And so, like I said, right now we're kind of in that watch and see what happens, figure out what kind of information we need, and then figure out the best, determine the next steps to move forward. But right now there is not a waiver for 2021.
Kate, I was wondering if I might be able to address the graduating juniors who might be eligible for, I'm not sure about APS, but for the UA Scholars Award.
Absolutely.
So first of all, if you graduate as a junior, kudos to you, like great job. We love that. And secondly, if you graduate as a junior and you graduate in the top 10% of the class, which would be per the qualifications of your high school. You just have to have your guidance counselor contact us, and we have a process in place where we review students who have either graduated early and fell in the top 10% but weren't listed in the original class, or who graduated and then discovered, whether you're a junior or senior, that you were in the top 10% when you graduated but weren't originally in the top 10%. So we would do a reconsideration for any student that graduates in the top 10%. That is as simple as contacting our office, having your guidance office send us basically your transcript showing us that you did graduate and that you are in the top 10%, and that you are in the top 10% either weighted or unweighted, whatever the original criteria was. And so yes, never fear. If you're a senior and you were this close to getting the Scholars Award, you have every incentive to work extra hard, because you could get that $12,000 if you graduate in the top 10%.
One other thing that I did forget to mention, but with a couple of the questions asked for UA Scholar that are also applicable and relevant for APS, eligible residents are they're Alaska residents for APS who graduate from an Alaska high school, and that can be public, private, homeschool. So like Lael said, pretty much any accredited school within the state would be considered for APS. And then in terms of the GPA, whether it's weighted or unweighted, that is actually something that is determined by the school and the district. So the reporting that goes through the district to the Department of Education, they're the ones that that calculate that. So if there is a question of eligibility in which GPA was used, you would want to run that through the district office for the reporting. But a really good question, and one that we do get asked quite a bit.
I did see a question from a guidance counselor for the early junior graduates. Is it based on their original class graduating year or their year that they actually graduate? And we have some weird periods where somebody graduates really, really early in the calendar year or really, really late in the calendar year. So we look at those essentially on a case-by-case basis. So if you think you have somebody, I tend to default with the last class that graduated. But if they graduate February 1st, that's a whole 9 months after the other class. Let's just talk about that. Give us a call. These are such great questions. I'm really impressed.
They really are.
Are there any Alaska scholarships that can be used at outside colleges? Kate, do you want to tackle that?
So let me just pull up here. In terms of the Alaska Performance Scholarship, as I mentioned, that again, it is in the intent of it is to, oops. Hello?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but everything on my screen just went blank. So we'll just keep talking. The Performance Scholarship is one that is for students to stay in Alaska. Right. So with respect to that, it would not be an option to utilize out of state.
What I have experienced is that a lot of the community scholarships can be used anywhere. So, you
Mhm.
know, Rotary or a church scholarship or the Kiwanis Club, a lot of those scholarships may be used anywhere. And many of the high schools have packets available. Now I think they're all electronic, but they used to have packets available where you apply for multiple scholarships that can be used anywhere in state or out of state. So I can't give you specific scholarships that can be used out of state, but I do know that they are generally published by the high schools. I think the city of Anchorage has a whole guidebook of those scholarships as well.
The one other thing that just came to mind, and again, I'm sorry, um, I have absolutely no visual here. I'm unable to um, pull
Something
up the
happened.
Zoom screen. Something very strange happened. But one other piece that we don't necessarily need to get too far into, but it is considered a scholarship or a tuition discount at many schools, is the Western Undergraduate Exchange, or WUI. So students, Alaskan students, it's a kind of consortium of Western states that, and they're public institutions. And if a school chooses to participate, non-residents from one of the other Western states may qualify for a tuition discount, which ends up being 150% of resident tuition. So it's not quite as low as resident tuition, but not the full out-of-state non-resident price. But every school is different on how they utilize that and what kind of programs are eligible to use that. You know, it might depend on a major or something along those lines. But that is something like a discount or a scholarship that it's treated as a scholarship at some institutions. So that's also something to kind of do a little bit more of your research on, potentially some due diligence there.
We have a couple of great questions in the chat box, and I'm going to read them. Kate, you might press the escape button on your keyboard. That might help minimize whatever the screen is that you were in. And we only have, I think we only have, it's 7:37 right now, so
Just a
few more minutes. But one question was, if you study abroad for a semester, would you still get the UA Scholars Award or APS scholarship amount for that semester, even if you aren't in the state in that specific semester? Guess what, guys? You can use your UA scholars to study away. We have National Student Exchange. You can do study abroad, and the Scholars Award covers all of that. So yes, the answer to that question is yes. And actually, any of the scholarships that the University of Alaska offers can be used for that purpose as well. And I believe almost all of your financial aid that you would get as if you were sitting in the seat in Alaska can be used to study abroad or study away. So my advice to all of you is make sure that if you want to have an adventure and study abroad and study away, do it at the in-state rate. Get your tuition, get your scholarships in-state, and do National Student Exchange, do study abroad. And then also, just a reminder, with the Scholars Award, you don't have to go immediately after high school to use the award. You could take off a semester, you could take off 2 semesters and come back. If you are a class of 2021, you could come back in 2022, and as long as you're enrolled, you can use it then. You can use it for summers. You can use it, it's very flexible in many ways. So before you say, oh, I can't use my Scholars Award for that, make sure you give us a call or check out our website, because you might be surprised about what you can use it for.
And my screen did come back, so I can see all the things now. But the same does go for the Alaska Performance Scholarship and the Alaska Education Grant. If a student, in terms of study abroad, if a student is participating in a study abroad or study away program that is through their college or university. So if it is, kind of wrapped up in your tuition bill, the APS or the AEG could also qualify there. Little bit different in terms of the Alaska Performance Benefit, if you go immediately after into college, into high school, if you do take a little bit of time, the time limit to receive the Alaska Performance Scholarship is 6 years, 6 years from the time of graduation. So, you know, to maximize the award, because you have 8 semesters over that 6 years, you know, you could potentially take off a year, two, depending on what's happening. But you know, if you were to take off some time and not go to school immediately after you graduate high school, but you were designated, we did receive, you know, yes, you are eligible to receive this award. The award is there for you. You have that 6 years to utilize it from the time you graduate. And I just saw the question about my contact information. So yes, I can share that as well.
And I have a slide with mine too after Kate, if you want to share yours.
Great.
And then I'll share mine.
Perfect. So there you go.
So there's Kate's. And the Zoom link is going to be sent to you, or can be found in your Strive, I think, sign-in area, which the facilitator who will be hopping back on will explain when she does. I will share, let me just share my screen real quick. This is my contact information. And then also I added on here for the UA Foundation scholarships, alaska.academicworks.com has the complete list of all of the scholarships, as well as the general application. And so I wanted to just very, 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 very quickly show you what the general application looks like. And just happened to me that I lost my screen share. Here we go. So this is the general application. You'll see that it just says which campuses are you planning to consider, when do you think you'll enroll, which campus, do you intend to take at least one online course? If so, where? I mean, so it just takes you through these basic questions and scholarship essay, and it will provide you with what recommended scholarships, based on the information that you provided, what recommended scholarships we have for you to apply to. And then you can apply to every scholarship that you might be eligible for. It might automatically apply for your scholarships or those scholarships. So anyway, I think it's worth filling out. It's a pretty easy application to do. And once you have done it, you have to update it each year, but you can't get the scholarship. You can't get scholarships for a lot of these organizations unless you apply. And so you never know if you would be the top candidate for the scholarships unless you actually fill out the application and do it. And my suspicion is that there are hundreds and hundreds of scholarships out there that you could apply to. If you're considering University of Alaska, you should definitely apply for the scholarships that are available there. It can really help to supplement the APS award. It can help to supplement the Alaska Education Grant. It can supplement everything else. And believe me when I say this, we frequently have not enough scholarship or applicants for some of the scholarships that we have, especially if you're, thinking about an obscure scholarship and you're from a remote area, or you are, I don't know, I am not being creative right now with my obscure scholarship requirements, but you may qualify and not even realize it, but you'll never know unless you apply. Okay. Were there any other questions before we get kicked off the webinar? I think that we might have covered them all. Kate, do you have any other tips or advice that you want to offer people before we end this?
Yeah, just to echo really what you just said there, for a number of these scholarships through the UA system, if you don't apply, you'll never know. And the amount of time that you take on that application, if it could result in thousands of dollars potentially,
For like an hour?
That's the best hour you're going to spend if it can result in that. And then the second piece, you have our contact information. Please don't hesitate to reach out. We would love to connect you with the folks that can kind of get you through the next stages, whether it's with the Scholar Award and kind of what your next steps are, whether it's APS, whether it's filling out the FAFSA. We'd really love to be able to bridge those gaps. So please don't be afraid to reach out and to make those connections, because that is what we're here for. So just to be mindful of that. And thank you for coming tonight.
Definitely. Thank you so much for joining us. This is awesome. And it's great to see so many folks. And I recognize a few names on the participant list. So we're still on. You have, I guess we're about to get kicked off, but if you have any additional questions, feel free to throw them in the question box and we will send a follow-up email to you all. I do have the handout that I will send through email to everybody that attended. And I just have to say thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Great, thank you both so much. And just like Lael was saying, we will be sending a transcript of these questions to both Kate and Lael, so they will be able to answer your questions if for some reason your question was not answered. I just have one more quick slide to share. I just want to thank you all so much for coming. We really appreciate your time. And as I mentioned before, this is recorded. So if you want to go back and re-listen to some of the information, or if there were some sessions that you wanted to attend and you were not able to, you are able to go back to the StriveScan website and watch those. So when I close this window, there will be a link that's sent out to you. It's a really quick 4-question survey, and we'd really appreciate any feedback that you can provide. And as I mentioned, those StriveScan, the webinars for this Anchorage, Alaska College and Career Fair have been recorded. And that website is strivescan.com/Alaska. So strivescan.com/Alaska. And in about a week, you'll be able to find these recorded sessions. So thank you all so much. Again, Lael and Kate, thank you for your presentations and thank you for joining. Everyone have a great night.
Thank you. Have a good night.